Hello everyone, and welcome back to my Upgrading Worlds series. Last time we left off with this map, looking a lot better than it did before, and we did all the country borders on this western continent here. Nothing on the islands yet, and nothing on the eastern continent. Did the rivers, made it look nicer. Well, I say look nicer, it's a blank slate still. But we got the mountain ranges, lakes, all this sort of stuff. So today we're gonna finish up the borders, the actual country borders, and then we're gonna move on to more aesthetic things. So for this island, I know on my original one I had it split between like 4 countries, which is kind of unrealistic. I mean, if you look at real life, there's very few islands that are split between multiple countries. Obviously, there's not none. Like Borneo is split between 3. Yeah, if you look at Canada and Greenland, there's that one island that made news because it was the one where they kept leaving the whiskey on to claim as their own island and then show solidarity or whatever. They split it in half. I mean, I don't know if I really count that. I mean, legally, yes, that is a border. However, you know, it's not really a border that in the sense that it's being enforced properly. You know what I mean? You get what I'm saying? It's a border in theory, but it's not. It's a de jure border, but de facto there's nothing there. So who really cares, you know? But yeah, a lot of islands tend to be all or nothing for countries. I'm kind of basing this little thing right here off of the Arabian Peninsula here. Like, you know, you have Yemen and Oman at the very end. Look, I accidentally made a Qatar, too. That was not intentional. Hey, but we'll stick with it. I know originally over here, I had a big empire over here that was kind of a precursor to Qatar. Qatar? Oh my god, bro, now I'm thinking about Qatar. Hakar in the Mulganas. Yeah, my world building was the predecessor to the real life nation of Qatar. But no, it was precursor to Hakar. And because it was also sort of like you know, this big empire here, it's pushed against everything because I had all these states down here that had clearly had like, because you know, you'd have this border here and then all the others would be like this, you know, so you could tell it looks like it pushed south, this big empire. Also, part of the lore, because I didn't have very much lore for this world, I was only in the very early stages of it, and then I kind of gave up on it and started making Milgana. But my lore that I did have was that this empire just recently invaded this whole section, which might be familiar because Hakar also has a very recently annexed big peninsula that juts out. You know. So, I did take some ideas and carry them over to the Mulgana series. But, to be honest, I don't really have that many ideas for this to begin with. That sounds kind of bad. Whoops. It's not like I didn't care about this world at all. I did think it was cool. I really wanted something to do with it. And then I started making the Mulgana world, and I'm like, I'm gonna focus on this. Because originally, I don't think I mentioned this before, Mulgana was supposed to be setting for a book. And I started writing it, but you know how writing can be. You get like 20 pages in, and then you're like, I don't know how good this is, and then it's hard to work on. It's like, should I restart? And I don't know. But also, that book doesn't really fit in the Mulgana setting anymore, so I'm gonna have to actually make a new world for it, because that book has sort of a magic system and stuff. More of a fantasy kind of thing. Similar time period in that there's firearms. However, the magic system does make things more complicated. And while Mulgana was originally supposed to have a magic system, the early Wilgana videos were made while I still had that in mind. This does not look good. I kind of figured out that it would have clashed with the whole like geopolitics focus I had, and for Milgana at least, I really enjoyed making these videos specifically about like countries and relationships between countries. And that was my main focus. And I feel like if I tried to have these two different focuses in the same world, it would have just clashed and just made things difficult to follow, and it just would have been unnecessary. So I'm gonna make a new world with that magic system. At least the outline I had of it. So I'm thinking maybe I'll do that on the channel. I'll actually like do a series where I start a world completely from scratch, and I'll show you guys my entire process. And you know what? Maybe I'll even have like little polls or something up on the channel where I ask your opinion on things. Like, oh, should I do this? Do you want this to happen? You know? I don't know. I think that'd be cool. Have like a interactive series where I start from scratch. Let me know if you'd be interested in that, because obviously I'm not gonna do that if like nobody wants to participate. Like if there's no demand for it, then yeah, we don't need to do that. I think it'd be cool. If anyone agrees, let me know in the comments. And I think I'll start working on that, because that sounds like a really fun idea. I'm gonna start making a few like smaller countries here, because my problem with this is that all these, they just look too samey, you know? Like, this is all supposed to be the southern border of one big nation, because I'm gonna keep that. I know I'm changing the borders up for the most part, but I am gonna keep that consistent. So I do run the risk of it, you know, I don't want it to look like a big straight line and then all are just like, and then I just went like, you know what I mean? So I am trying to kind of spice it up here a little bit at the end, because I like to intersperse these really smaller states with bigger ones, and it creates a sort of variance that looks nice. Think of it as like, when you're writing, I am a writing major, so I know a little bit, but when you're writing, it's good to sort of mix in shorter sentences with longer sentences. You don't want to write like a whole page of sentences that are all about the same length, because it doesn't matter how long or short they are, it starts to get very monotonous. I mean, there are times you'll want to do that, like, you know, if it's something very like hectic and chaotic, then you can have like all these run-ons to show that there's no focus, or if you know, you could have like a lot of really short sentences to show things like happening one after another. That's the same thing. I know what I'm trying to say. But generally, when you're writing, you want it to be interesting, and you create interest by having variance, because you'll have maybe a sentence that's like 30 words, so a really longer run-on sentence, and then you'll have a sentence that's like 6 words, a really like short punctuated one. That sort of creates interest because your mind, when you're reading, is less able to predict what's coming next. It's sort of like, I remember seeing this thing where these drivers in like Russia in this really long like tunnel kept crashing, and I think the reason was because all of the lights in there were so monotonous that it sort of hypnotized drivers, and they would literally fall asleep at the wheel, and then they would crash. So a solution for that is to vary the lights. Maybe have like a couple ones that are like brighter than the others, have random longer gaps, shorter gaps between them. And it's the same with sentences when you're writing. You have a short sentence and a long one, so that way it's unpredictable, and it keeps them wanting to keep reading. I don't know how I got on the topic of writing advice when I'm drawing borders, but I hope it's at least somewhat interesting to somebody. This channel was originally not about world building. It was originally about short stories that I've written. I was going to narrate the short stories and upload that. However, I've realized that's not very interesting content, and people probably don't want to watch that. If I'm gonna share my short stories, I think I'd rather just upload them somewhere for people to read rather than narrating them myself. The channel was originally called Limelight Storytelling instead of World Building. However, I figured I'd change it because I think I'd rather focus just on the world building. But I will branch out to slightly other content. Nothing too different. It'll stay in this same vein, but I'll have a little bit of variance with it. So it's not just going to be Morgana series, upgrading world, maybe that new series I mentioned. It's not just going to be alternating between those. There are going to be like one-off videos every now and then where I just maybe analyze other things. I don't know. Let me know what you think. Let me know if there's any series you want to see on here. And despite what I said earlier, I am going to split this island into like 2 countries. We could have like a west and an east, like a Germany kind of thing going on. Yeah, why not? When I was in middle school, I would draw these maps on paper all the time. That's how I got started. And one of my favorite things to do was make a country that was like clearly divided by civil war. So let's say I have like this here. And I would make like west. I have these like really weird borders. This would be like a west. And this would be an east. And then this thing, which is like lifted up, would also be part. And then I would call this north, and maybe it would extend up a bit. The the whole point was that the west and the east went more north than the north, and I think that was just inspired by the fact that I learned that West Virginia doesn't extend as far west as regular Virginia. And when I found that out, I was fascinated for some reason. So next we have to do the borders with all these islands, because obviously there's going to be some. So what I'm going to do is we're going to do a dotted line over the water to show where one country's domain ends and another begins. So originally I had this country owning like this, part of this, up to here. I'm not going to be doing that again. I'm going to give them, whoops, I'm going to give them this island. Should I give them this island? Nah, I'm not giving them that. And then, so this is a fun part, just like looking at this, dividing, and being like, where do I think these countries would go? Now, I am going to keep consistent is that this country owns this. It owns Qatar, owns these, and maybe I'll go to here. Although it would be kind of funny to have like a comically long extension. It's kind of like Hawaii when you find out that the outer, like the Hawaiian Islands actually go like really, really far out. That might be interesting. No, well, I'm gonna go to here. And that's what it's gonna have. And then maybe this could be some sort of like little federation in here. Yeah, I think that's a good idea, and it could be some sort of like place that thrives off of people stopping for trade and outposts and whatever. So then this thing that looks like a brain, own. Yeah, I can own these. Sorry, I'm being picky with my line. That's fine. And then this will all be one country. I'm not sure if this is the best way to demarcate it. It's how I do it. It's how I did it on Milgana in a few instances where it seemed necessary. I'm not sure if that's the best way to do it. Maybe not, but it's what I do. So, let me know if you think that there's a better way to do it or go about it. I don't know. I'm always open to trying new things with my maps. I mean, hey, I normally don't even draw mountains. I mean, I have, but normally I don't bother. But I honestly think it's a good idea here, and it looks nice. So then my main concern now is, I have these, so what owns these? It looks too small to be its own nation. Well, not necessarily, but it seems out of place, you know? My original thing on the older version of the map was that I had these, like, colonies here. So this island is a native nation to here, but it was getting pushed back by all these colonies in the north, of which there were a few. And that was inspired by Guyana, Suriname, and French Guiana in South America. That's what kind of inspired the way these looked, because I originally had 3 of them. But I'm thinking maybe this will be its own nation, but it could be a puppet state of some larger empire or kingdom or whatever. Speaking of, I don't even know what time place this takes place in. Maybe I should have figured that in. Figured that in? Why did I say figure that in? Figure that out. Maybe I should figure that out. But this should be probably a direct colony of something. It'd be really funny if I made it like some country that's not even that close. Like this or something. That's really funny. I'm gonna do that. I say funny. It's funny to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm weird and I don't know who else thinks, oh yeah, this country controls a colony that is not in close proximity to because of its shipping routes. That's so funny. I don't know. Oh well. So then this can belong to this bigger nation. There. This one's gonna be independent. So I'm not even gonna demarcate it. I'm just gonna leave it. Because it's far enough away from stuff that I don't know if I need to. Yeah, but this is like, it goes like continuously. So I think it is necessary there. But this, it'll have its own color when we color in the map. I think, depending on how I decide to do this. So then here, maybe, I'm trying to think. So this owns this up here. All these. So maybe I should have like one small nation here. And this will be independent. And then maybe a larger federation? That might be... No, that's too big. There's this big gap here, so that would be a natural barrier. But I like to subvert things. And it's just inspired by the real world. Because in the real world, things aren't always the most convenient. And there might be a natural border one way, and then you cross that and then stop at an arbitrary point. So you know what? I'm going to do that. You know, I'm kind of liking these borders. I think we're done. Not obviously with the whole map, but I think we're done with just the borders. Okay, so now I need to figure out how I want this to look. Okay, so we're going to create a copy of the borders. And this is going to be borders filled. So this is just a little bit of experiment here. And I'm going to move this down because I need the mountains and the rivers on top of it. So if I start just paint bucket filling in country borders, how is it going to look? So I'm going to pick a softer color. With the original Melgana map, I gave every state its own color. I changed that for the redone map and decided to go with like a 5-color scheme, I think. And that was just because, I don't know, I thought it looked nicer. I thought it looked more professionally done. Let's see. Well, there's not really much here. So let's see. If I color a few nations in yellow, and then color in a few nations like this soft green. This is actually terrible. This is awful. This looks horrible. Okay, we are not doing that. This is not it. I do not like that. Okay. How am I gonna go about this? I could, because I have the mountains drawn, I could try and do a more climate kind of map. You know what I mean? So like, let me get a nice soft, kind of friendly green. That's too bright, that's too harsh. That's too soft. It's gonna be, about here. Turn it down. That just looks like vomit. Turn it up a bit. And then we're gonna make this big. Okay. So I'm above the lakes layer. Okay, this is one issue you will see sometimes. When you follow my method of doing all these different layers. So outline. Oh, because I'm drawing on the outline layer. Oh my god. Okay, there. That's not a big deal because I can then go and fill these in on the upper layer. So that's, yeah, that's not a big deal. The borders are above this, so then I'm going to have to turn the borders layer, this borders layer. That is also working out, because then I could always have more layers to turn on. So even though I said it's the way the water is, it's slightly inconvenient the way I did my layers, this is also a good reason why you should have all these layers. Because if I did, like, most of this on only, like, 2 or 3 layers, it would be a pain in the ass to do this. Because I'm going to have to probably end up retracing things, and when you retrace things, they're not going to look the exact same way. And it would just not work out great. If I say this is like, hold on, so, then I go up, and then yeah, so I fill this in, so that way, okay. Okay, well I don't want that, so now we're gonna make another layer, because this is just how I do things. Borders, ocean. Okay. And then even though it's called ocean, we're the unthinkable and fill in the lakes too. Heaven forbid. I'm not trying to fill in all of them right this second. Well, it would be helpful actually if I just turn off the water layer. The old water layer, because now I can actually see what I'm doing. Okay. And then if I return to wherever, there we go. Now, okay, let's see. So let me have like a more grayish for the mountains. How does that look? I'm not really feeling it. Okay, well, new idea. Okay, so if I go back to the borders filled, and I go to the paintbrush, and I include pressure sensitivity. How does this look? And the reason I'm doing this is to see how like a natural kind of like smudged look to the colors looks. I mean, almost like an artificial, it's like I'm trying to replicate a watercolor kind of effect, you know? Yeah, I don't think that's it either. Wait! If these are mountains, perhaps I should do white. Now, whenever I do things, I actually go slightly off-white. I go into gray a little bit, because I find that just straight white can be a little harsh when you have all these other colors around. Okay, let me get rid of this actually. There we go, beautiful. I don't have that basic background my way. Get those edges there. But we're not done yet. We have not cracked the code quite yet. Because you're going from white straight into this nice green. And that is no can do. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to get a whiter version of this green. And it's going to be kind of a transition. How do I feel about this? Okay, this looks like shit. Alright, we're not gonna be doing that. Actually, new plan. Like I said, we are learning as we go. Now, I forgot all the doors filled. Okay. So if I know... If I just do this... Trust me, I have a reason for it. I'll fill in the water here soon. One thing at a time. I say as I cover in the entire map. Okay, actually we're gonna leave it like that. Series done. No, I'm kidding. So then we're gonna go this. We're gonna shrink it down. 65. And then we're gonna make it a lot softer. And we're gonna turn on our sensitivity. I am learning as I go. And I'm sure there's much better ways to do this, and I'm sure you will let me know. And please do, because I want to learn and I want to improve with every video and every map I make. I really do try to consistently improve my content. Because just like with map making, video making, I am not good at. I have next to no experience with video editing. But with every video, I think I'm getting a little better. And I try to improve a bit with each video. Now, how do I feel about this? With the white, I like it. Oh, whoops, I missed some stuff here. This probably looks really funny if you turn off the water layer. Actually, here, let me do that. Yeah, it does look funny. Oh well. But now we have that, and now we need to figure out the other climates once I get these mountains figured out. So I'm going to speed up the video. And we're going to cut, well not cut, but we're going to zip on over to me having all the mountains done. Okay, I'm a bit more happy with this. I think that Looks pretty nice. So now we have to figure out the other climate colors. So we're gonna have a more like lush green. Has to actually look more lively, not just darker. What's this? Yeah, I like that. Okay, we're gonna have that in specifically, most notably around rivers. So that's where a lot of vegetation and life is gonna be. I mean, that's where people are gonna be, obviously. Like this nation right here with this entire river system is gonna be one of the most populous on the entire map, just by the nature of its geography. Okay, so these are our most lush and vegetated areas. And I'm kind of presuming, the way I did this, that the wind must go from west to east, and that therefore the semi-arid regions, because I don't think I'm going to put any proper deserts here, but the semi-arid regions are going to be on the eastern side of the mountains, because that's just how that goes. I know I said I wasn't going to go into like physical geography and that sort of stuff, but the rain shadow effect is pretty basic, so I don't know. Someone's gonna correct me and say I'm wrong because of the something. I don't know. Oh well, it's fine. I don't mind being wrong. How's this? No, that's too arid. It's like bright yellow sand. It's just ugly. So how am I gonna do this? So maybe actually more gray to show that it's more dead. You know what I mean? So if I go to a gray and then I lean towards green and then sort of soften it up a bit. How do I feel about this? No, I'm not really feeling it. Maybe a gray leaning towards yellow. I kind of like that, actually. Yeah, I kind of like that. I think I'm gonna go with that. Because the thing with the gray leaning towards green that I just did is that it honestly just makes me think of a swamp more. And that's not what I'm going for. So now, I'll start doing this. And specifically, focusing eastern part of these mountains. And I'll leave some space for the coast of this lake. How's that? What are we thinking? What are we thinking about that? And now in the north, I want it to be colder because I'm a filthy resident of the northern hemisphere and north means cold to me. Even though I've specifically made Morgana be the exact opposite, meaning Morgana is the southern hemisphere because the south is cold and the warm. And the warm is north. Yeah, I mean, that's not completely inaccurate to say. But the north is warmer than the south, basically. So I'm gonna have a green leaning towards a blue. It's Ah, beautiful. That is beautiful right there. This is just to show that it's not dead up here, but it's not as fertile. It's not as welcoming. Things are getting a bit rough around the edges. Southern part of this island would be these, like that. And I think this entire island is going to be this way. The very northern part of this way. So I think it's more interesting to not have it line 100% up with this. This extends it a bit. Maybe we'll even have this island here. I like this. I don't think I'm going to fill in the colors anymore. Now, you may disagree, you may think it looks unfinished, and that's fair. But for what I'm doing with this map with the mountains and the climates, I honestly really like this, and I think I'm going to stick with this. If you disagree, again, that's completely fair, and I understand. Maybe not the nicest looking map I've ever made, but I honestly think it's up there. I really like this. I'm proud of this. Let's snuck in there. One over here. All things considered, I think this is pretty good. Now we're almost done. I don't think I'm going to bother naming these nations because I don't know. I don't really have lore for this world, and I don't know if they need it yet. I might. This is supposed to be like. I'm gonna say is. I'm just gonna go with this. I don't really have lore for it, and I think it's best that this is just a nice looking project. But we are going to make some major cities. One of my favorite things to do, for some reason, I don't know why this was always one of my favorite things to do, was mark exactly where the capitals are. Because honestly, you could show a decent bit about the culture and like the habits of the people just by showing where the capital is. Because if you have like a massive nation like this, or a big one, big populated one like this, where the capital is, make a big difference. This is gonna. It's not. Actually, no, I'm curious. How does this look? Ah, yes. Beautiful. So we'll make a new layers for cities, just because that's how I am. I'm gonna have this red, kind of a, no, that's candy. Yeah, like deep maroon. No. Lean towards here. There, that's good. Beautiful. Let's go up to 18. This is where we're gonna mark where the capitals are. So this, I'm thinking the south, and this like protruding bit. These two I actually made more detailed maps of, and I remember. This, maybe on this west coast in this little protected bay here. This nation, I'm thinking the lush east makes for the best spot. This here, probably along the river, farther back a bit so it's protected from the actual ocean itself. This little thing, imagining this is all one nation here. up on the north coast. Okay, this is independent, and this is part of this nation because it's funny. Thinking maybe right on this little harbor here. And this one's got to be over here on this nice little river. This little nation. It's just on the east coast. I'm distracted by going this way into the ocean. But I should probably focus on the actual continent here first. It's gonna be closer to the ocean. This one will be further back on the river. Generally, if it has like a more lush area, I'm going to put the capital there, with some exceptions, but I'll be deliberate with those exceptions. And when I'm giving like advice, I don't know if I'm really wise enough in world building to be giving advice, but when I am, just remember that I'm not saying, oh, you should always do this, or you should always do that. If I'm saying like typically this is what this is, I more mean be deliberate with the use of exceptions. Let's say rivers typically don't split. That doesn't mean never have a river split. That's not allowed. Obviously, that doesn't mean that. I more just mean that it'll be more interesting, and I think it'll flesh out your world more if whenever you do have a river split, you're deliberate with it. And it has some sort of cultural impact on the area, the way the rivers go, or has an actual reason for it, or it's just very important to your story that you're trying to tell. That sort of thing. Maybe it should be further back, like down here. Like little almost city states. I wonder what the lore is there. Like for the city states so far north, it's not like they can be getting that much trade. I really know what the story is like. As if I didn't make it. I don't know. If you want me to come back to this world and do something with it, let me know. I probably won't for a while. That doesn't mean never. And I will be more than happy to come back at some point. I do have more worlds that I want to work on, specifically for this upgrading series. But also, like I said, I want to do that series where I start from complete scratch, and I maybe work with the audience and we get some stuff done. So, once again, let me know if you want to see that. Or if you don't want to see that, let me know that too, because then I won't do it. There's like a mountainous nation here. I think it's really cool to have like at least one of those. Don't have to. But I'm putting capital right in the middle of the mountains. Here. Speaking of lakes, I missed a lake. Whoops. Now we're going to move on to this here. Actually, you know what? It's more interesting to have it on like one of the smaller islands. So you think of like Malé in the Maldives. Like there's so many people and so much development packed on that one small island. Very interesting. That doesn't, but like I said, when I do things like that, like have it on a smaller island, something that seems less intuitive, got to be deliberate with my use of it. It's like these nations, I'll have it on like one of the biggest islands, if not the biggest island. I think it's not the biggest island in all cases, but that makes the exception where this is on one of the smaller islands that much more interesting. I don't want it in like in the armpit here. You see what I mean? I kind of want it up here. Yeah. I'm gonna keep it like that. I hope I haven't bored you too much with this video today. I think this has been a really fun process. It's been a learning process too. Obviously, I don't really know what I'm doing. This is going to be part of this. I'm just kind of using my own experience because I have spent a lot of time world building throughout the years and making maps specifically. So I'm just sort of using that experience to try and learn how to do it even better. And oops. But yeah, if you have any advice for me, I'd be happy to hear it. Let me know in the comments. Anytime you want. Is this supposed to be like... That is supposed to be a lake. What do you know? Oh my god. If it helps if I'm in the right layer when I'm doing this stuff. There we go. Beautiful. Yeah, that seems interesting. And I think that's all of them. So that's where we're going to leave this map for now. Maybe one day I'll revisit it and I'll flesh out these nations that are currently unnamed. If you want that, let me know. If you don't want that, let me know. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you feel like. It's fine too. And I'll see you next time.